I'm Sonia Menezes, and I'm the founder of the Sapience Consultancy, which is a brand and business building consultancy that I've set up recently. But I think most people who will be watching this will know me from my previous role, which was head of brand at Clogau.
Amazing. So how long have you been in the jewellery trade for?
Oh, goodness, let me think. Probably, I'd say it's 14, 15 years in total.
Right. So quite a long time then.
Yeah, quite a long time. And I originally joined a company called Hot Diamonds, and I was there for about 3.5 to 4 years before I joined Clogau.
Amazing. So what was your first, was Hot Diamonds your first introduction into the trade? Was that your first jewellery?
It was. Prior to that, previous to that, I was in the drinks industry. So I worked for Diageo for 3.5 years, which was a publicly owned company. And then I moved to Bacardi Martini, which was privately owned and family run, and worked there for about 3.5 years as well, in a variety of sales and marketing roles.
Right.
After 7 years in the drinks industry, as you can imagine, it was a hell of a lot of fun.
I can imagine, yeah.
It was sure. Really good fun. And it left me a very good appreciation for a great martini.
Yeah.
And after that, I suppose you reach a stage where you've got your good skill set, or at least I had a good skill set behind me. I wanted to take that learning and just transfer it onto something completely different and move into a different industry altogether. So, that was the time I joined Hot Diamonds.
So did you have any insight into the jewellery industry? Did you know anyone in the trade? Did you kind of know what it was about and, all the different sides of the jewellery trade? You literally went in blind?
No, I only knew the jewellery that I liked, but that was the extent of my my information or my knowledge of it. So when I went in, Hot Diamonds was a great company for me to join, because at the time the brand was doing exceptionally well. And it gave me really good insight, not only into the brand that I was working with and I was joining, but also where it sat within the industry, within its competitor set. I got to meet a lot of the big players, the people who were good to link in with at the beginning of a brand new career at that time. So yeah, it worked really well for me.
And you stayed in the trade essentially, so you must like it.
I did, and I had a great time at Hot Diamonds. But one of the things that I missed about what I missed from the drinks industry was working with a brand that had a really good kind of story behind it, I suppose. Right. That had, I think whatever you do, like on a day-to-day basis, if you can weave in the things that interest you generally, then you're pretty lucky. And I've always had a passion for history, for the written word. And when I joined Clogau, which has an amazing heritage, it was a really good opportunity to take maybe some of my outside interests, outside of like my career, and bring that into it. So it doesn't feel so much like work then, does it? No,
definitely not. Definitely. And you almost feel part of the story as well.
Yeah, like, and you can really,
it's family-run business. Kind of, you're an addition to that,
That's it. And I also felt that I was playing to my strengths, which is a nice position to be in. It gives you a really good, firm foundation to make a start.
Right. Okay. So obviously it's International Women's Day on March the 8th, and talking to some other females within the jewellery industry, and just asking them, whether they've had or come across any kind of difficulties within their time within the trade for being female, or so they thought it was because they're female. Have you kind of felt that in particular? There's any points that you kind of can remember, any specific times?
I can, but I think it's important to kind of point out that at this point in time, that I can look back on that and see that there are two approaches to this. There are the difficulties that you face from like other people's behaviour, but also from the difficulties that you face from your own mindset that creates its own limitations. And hindsight's a wonderful thing where you can actually look back and appreciate that. I suppose by the time I got into the jewellery industry, I was quite well on in my career and pretty confident. So maybe some of the casual sexism, and there's nothing casual about it, but the kind of microaggressions that you kind of experience early on in your career become less prevalent, or you become better equipped at dealing with it,
Hmm.
the older you get and the more experience you have of it, and you can recognize it for what it is. But also, I think that there is a there's a mindset that you can fall into. There's a conditioning that goes along with that casual sexism and the remarks that are made that you kind of brush off at the beginning. And as I said, that there can be very kind of things that you brush off it, they don't matter so much, but then you can be part of bigger conversations where I actually think, no, that's more of a problem. And kind of when I was thinking about this, I thought about a discussion that I was involved in that was to do with redundancies. And this was a while ago, and the discussions around the redundancies were such that the males who were in the frame, so to speak, a lot of the discussions around them was that they had a family to look after, that they would be exempted from that for that reason. Whereas a couple of females who were also part of that discussion, the mentality was that, well, their partner's got a good job, or, they'll be looked after.
Yeah.
And was almost that dismissal of the woman's career, that it didn't matter so much because her obligations weren't the same. It was an assumption. It wasn't necessarily true, and it shouldn't matter. And when I look back on that and being involved in those discussions, that I suppose what I took away from that you begin to question your own position, that you think, ooh, do I make a fuss about something like that? Or should I be taking up less space? And I mean, I don't have, in a sense, I don't have children. I think, is that true, that it matters more if somebody does have if a man does have those responsibilities? Once you eradicate that mindset, that gap begins to become a lot less.
Right.
And there's not that thought somehow that a woman's career isn't as important, or can be, put to one side.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It is an assumption. It's an assumption. You're looking into someone else's life where you only see the surface, really, and it essentially should matter more of the job that they do and whether they're good at their job, and that's why you need them. So, yeah, it's that's quite an interesting thought thing to hear, really. Different take on it. I mean, obviously speaking to other females, you hear a lot about starting a family, and their worry is obviously going on maternity leave, and the company's worry of whether they support them coming back, and that's kind of the more generic worry for a female, but to hear it from another side is quite interesting, really. So what advice, as someone that was sort of seeing that and now looking back on it, what advice would you have given to those women, or even to women now that could potentially be in that situation, could be facing redundancy or coming up for a role between a man and a woman for a promotion as such? And it could literally be, well, he's got a family to support and she doesn't. So what advice would you give to them?
I think that it's not only about giving the advice to the person who's experiencing it, it's about the people who are making those decisions as well, to make sure that there's parity within the workplace, that when those discussions are being had, that you leave these assumptions outside of that you make sure that it's a fair process for anybody who happens to be involved. And that's just about educating people around you, and again, I think that as time has moved on, you become less complacent about these things, and you think, well, it's not really going to affect me, so that doesn't matter. But actually recognizing these misconceptions or preconceptions, and the effect that they can have, the long-reaching, far-reaching consequences of it, and not just because you are going to be affected by it. So I think it's about educating the people that you work with. It's calling out behaviour like that when you see it. I think that's so important to do. And I think that we're becoming a lot better at doing that, and just helping people to understand that it has to be a fair process for everybody, irrespective of their gender.
Do you think the industry's changed as you've been in the industry, over 15 years? Do you see it different to how it was when you first got into the trade?
Yeah, I do. I think one of the most positive things that I was a part of was the introduction of the Women's Jewellery Network. Now, that's dormant at the moment, but when Victoria set it up, I think we all felt, or everyone who was involved, and I was one of the founding ambassadors, that it was such a positive move forward within our industry. And some of the people that I got to meet who were just starting out within their careers, you could sense the gratitude from them, that they immediately felt that they were part of something much bigger than themselves. Because I think sometimes it can be quite lonely as well when you're starting out within a new industry, or you're a designer major working, you know, the majority of the time by yourself. And you don't just need practical help, you need that emotional support. And there's this kind of unofficial sisterhood in any kind of industry, that if you get to know the right women, then that'll put you in a really good place.
No, definitely. And it's almost a shame that it's sort of not continuing, because more and more we're seeing so many more women come into the jewelry industry, where it used to be a predominantly male-dominated industry. You know, we're almost taking over in that respect. We do a lot of talks to university jewelry students, and 80-90% of the class are female, which is amazing. But obviously when they kind of get to the point where they're setting up their own business, a lot of them do feel like there is that disconnect. You know, they do need advice and they do need coaching, because they're into a new industry and it can be quite scary. So to have something there, and this is kind of the reason why I'm almost doing these videos, to sort of show this new generation that actually there are really successful women within the jewelry industry. It's not just, you know, the males that tend to have dominated it for quite a long time. That we're sort of, you know, there are females still here and they are still reachable. Just because the Women's Jewellery Network's not around anymore, you can still connect with these people.
Yeah, you can. And I think that, as you know, we said it's a shame that it's not operating anymore, but it's been left in a position where I'm sure if, you know, somebody has the time and the motivation and the effort wants to put the effort into to bring it back, then that is something that can happen. And you know, I couldn't recommend it highly enough, because I think it's not only understanding, having that support, but it's also speaking to people who are at different levels within their own careers and where they are within the industry as well. You know, I think whether you're starting out or whether you're midway and you're looking to move across or upwards, then there was definitely enough women there with enough experience in order to access somebody who would be able to help you.
And that's it. There's so much knowledge that would potentially be lost unless it's shared, you know. So, I mean, would you think it would benefit, maybe not to have something really formal and structured, to have almost like a Facebook group? I mean, I don't know if there is one out there, to be fair, just as something as simple as, you know, a females only jewelry net, so exactly the same sort of thing, but an online forum that people can go and talk and share their problems and talk to people that have been through these issues and get advice, whether it's business marketing advice, something. Do you think that would benefit?
Yeah, I think you know, any community that is kind of searchable as well, where if you want to speak to somebody who is in a, I don't know, who's set up their own workshop, or if you want to speak to somebody who is CEO, then you should be, you know, if those people could be contacted, if you could look at their biographies, drop them a line, you know, have a chat, then yeah, I think that would be a really positive thing to have.
Maybe it's something I might have a look at, see if I can set up. Because I mean, essentially it's time, isn't it? Being involved in different associations, as well as doing a full-time job. I know for a lot of people, it takes up a lot of time, and to go to meetings and to have, you know, obviously now with COVID, it's become more difficult, but you almost to have an online forum where, you know, you can have it set up and it runs itself almost, would probably be really, really helpful, I think. I mean, even for me, you know, I've been in the jewelry trade for 10 years, but I'm learning all the time, and there's always questions that I want to know. And as my life changes, and sometimes, you know, I've got a lot of supportive men around me where I work, but sometimes you do want to talk to a female. You know, you do want to say, oh, you know, what did you do when this happened? And to sort of to have someone there to do that, it's knowing who these people are. So yeah, maybe.
It is. And, you know, like you say, we're all always learning. And I know that having in the last year set up my own business, which is the first time I've done something like that, and I've had, you know, people to speak to, but it would have been great to access a community of women that I could say, oh, you know, God, you set up your business. I've seen you do really well with that. How did you go about it?
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Maybe it's something, sure, that we could, well, I'll have a look into. If you think it's something that would be, you know, helpful to the jewelry community, then
I do. And I think, you know, look at what we've all been through recently over the past year and a half. I think that isolation and feeling, you know, on the periphery is something that has affected so many people. Anything that brings the women in the industry back together again would be a really good move forward.
Perfect. Well, that's essentially my questions all done. So yeah, I really appreciate your time. It's like I said, nice to virtually meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you too.
Yeah, so tell me, before we just tell me a bit about what you're doing now.
Yeah, so the consultancy that I've set up is about, well, a few things really. I suppose it's taking all of the knowledge and the experience that I have in putting strategic business plans together for different brands and businesses. And interestingly enough, the client that I've been working with most over the last year, they're involved in the music industry, which is completely different to what I've been doing. But again, it's, I suppose, you know, taking that skill set, and actually, if there is a piece of advice that I could offer, is to anyone starting out, that whether it's in this industry or another one, that building a flexible skill set is so important. And it's important to do what you love. And like I said earlier, if you can take the things that interest you and bring that into your job, then that's fantastic. But also to build a skill set that is transferable is a really important thing to be able to do. So I've been able to take my knowledge and apply it across different industries now, which is something that I hope to continue to do.
Amazing. Well, that sounds really interesting. It sounds like you can be involved in almost anything, in any industry. Yeah. You can apply it to.
It's strange how small the world is as well, that if you've got a good network and a good set of contacts around you, that I've been able to call on people who I've worked with over the last kind of 15, actually the last 20 years, while I've been, you know, setting this up. And those friendships and those, you know, relationships have endured. And yeah, it's good to have that to fall back on.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for speaking to me. I appreciate your time. And yeah, good luck with the new venture.
Thanks
very much. Wish you all
the
best and success. And hopefully we can catch up at some point, face to face.
Let me know how you get on with setting up the network.
Yeah, no, for sure. You've put that thought in my mind.